The PG-13 rating. What was its origin? What was the whole idea behind it? We're going to find out in this video. How's it going, old schoolers? You're kicking it old school. I'm your host, Russell J.S. I know it's been a while since I've done a video, whether it was kicking it old school or weekly narc, but I've been plenty busy with things. As in the last few months, I now have a girlfriend. I got a real sweet girlfriend. She's really cool. And, I've been plenty busy. Mustang Sally had to go into the shop, and the holiday season came and went. Now we're in a new year. Happy belated new year. 2023. I think 2023 is going to be really good. Anyway, enough about that. I had to go ahead and make a video. I just started watching the first couple episodes on Netflix of that 90s show, the sequel to that 70s show. And, I was sitting there thinking to myself, wow, hard to believe that everything 90s is now old school. I guess I'm old school. I'm old. I'm only 44 years old, but, hey, old school is cool. It was cool when I was a teenager, stuff of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But I had to go ahead and stop watching it so I can make this video, because if I didn't make this video, I kept on talking about doing this video to myself, and I was putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. But I have to make this video. I got to start making videos again. I'm coming up with ideas. It's not easy being a creator when you do content like I do, because you always have to come up with new things and, props, the whole works. But I've been wanting to do this video about the PG-13 rating. How did it come about? I'm going to tell you how it came about. So without further ado, let's check this bad Oscar out, shall we? Okay, the year was 1984. Reagan was president. That summer, I was 5 going on 6. I had my first trip to Disney World. I had, that summer, my first trip to the Kennedy Space Center, my first trip to Florida all around. And in that summer, I experienced some newer movies that were coming out. In the wake of such great classic family-style movies like, say The Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., and Return of the Jedi, Steven Spielberg, his name was synonymous with family entertainment throughout the 80s. But in 1984, there was a stream, a plethora, if you will, of really great classic movies, whether they were comedies, actions, dramas, horror. Jason, we thought it was going to be the final chapter of Friday the 13th. We were introduced to Freddy Krueger. And a lot of great movies, like Purple Rain, This is Spinal Tap. Got a plethora of great movies, but there were 3 that caught my attention. After all, I was a kid. And those 3 movies, other than Terminator and, all kinds of stuff, was Ghostbusters, Gremlins, and the second installment in the Indiana Jones franchise, known as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Steven Spielberg was an executive producer on Gremlins, and he was also the director of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom of that year. Now, the big issue that was going on with both those movies, and I think Ghostbusters was involved with that too, you see, all 3 of those movies were rated PG. Parental guidance suggested some material may not be suitable for children. You see, the rating system goes back to the late 1960s. You had G, which was general audiences, all ages. PG, as I said, parental guidance suggested. And R, restricted, for viewers under the age of 17 have to be accompanied by a parent or a legal guardian. Well, you see, in 1984, parents got outraged over family movies such as Gremlins and Temple of Doom because the violence was over the top with the special effects, little mild profanity, you know, a lot of stuff. I mean, parents actually did complain about the violence that was in Temple of Doom and Gremlins. I mean, at one point, those movies, the way they were written, they were so violent they came close to securing an R rating. But the thing is, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and all them people out there in Hollywood, they went ahead and they toned down the violence in those movies. So that way it could secure a PG rating. Like here are the three movies. Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was rated PG. And a lot of kids went to go see this movie starring Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, and Ernie Hudson and Annie Potts. There was some mild violence, mild profanity. The main characters were smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. And there were some suggestive themes they were talking about. So I think maybe parents kind of complained about this one right here. But it became a phenomenon where 2 years later, children all over the world loved this movie so much that they even made a cartoon show on Saturday morning based off this movie with a toy line and merchandise to boot. Video games, toys, lunchboxes, you name it. I mean, back in the 80s, even R-rated movies like Rambo were getting kids' lunchboxes and cartoons and toy lines for kids. I mean, I think to myself, wow, that doesn't happen today. So, like, they went ahead, as soon as Ghostbusters 2 came out 5 years later in 1989, they did very little. They didn't really show much of drinking beer. Dan Aykroyd chewed on a non-lit cigar. And there was still some mild profanity, but because of the children's aspect of it, they kind of had to tone down a bit. Now, here's where we're getting at. In Gremlins, there was a lot of hijinks, comedy, humor, a lot of violence. You know, monsters running around a small town on Christmas Eve, destroying things. Even shooting a little old lady out the window on her little side chair going up the stairs. And monsters driving a guy's snowplow through his house. All kinds of crazy shenanigans in this movie. But this is the main one, I believe. This is one of the main ones that parents had a complaint about. And then 6 years later, they came out with a sequel called Gremlins 2: The New Batch. And what had happened was they even did a parody of it. You know, and they even had Hulk Hogan make an appearance, threatening to beat up the Gremlins if they didn't stop messing around with the movie. And it was really good. But the main one, I think, was the main antagonist, Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. I mean, they had a lot of gunfire going off, people getting shot up, and they even ripped a guy's heart out. There were guys sitting at a table eating snakes and bugs and monkey brains, and they even ripped a guy's heart out and lowered him in a lava pit. Funny thing about that was a lot of these movies received storybooks for kids. Let's go ahead and take a flip through here. Let's see here. I mean, this is a child's storybook. It's got two people trapped in a room where the floor and ceiling are pushing down their spikes. They show images of skulls. Oh, and look at this. They got the scene where Mullah Ram just ripped that dude's heart out of his chest for this. Look at this. They're doing human sacrifice in a children's storybook. And look at that. There's a scene after the guy got lowered in the lava. His heart is on fire in Mullah Ram's hand. You gotta love that. I mean, I think to myself, you know, I look back and you look at the way things are today. They couldn't get away with this in a family movie. So what happened was, with all the complaints, because this almost secured an R rating, along with Gremlins, Steven Spielberg came up with an idea. What if we can make a rating that's between PG and R, where parents can be understanding that there's going to be some grotesque imagery, sexual innuendos, mild violence, and things like that. So they came up with what, forgive me, I'm kind of fighting a cold right now, small cold. Don't worry, it's not COVID. I already went through that over the summer. But anyway, Steven Spielberg came up with the idea, how about we call this rating PG-13? Parents strongly cautioned some material may be inappropriate for children under the age of 13. And you know what? It stuck. And then the next movie, the very first movie ever to come out, I think this came out in 84, 85, that secured a PG-13 movie, was Red Dawn with C. Thomas Howell, Patrick Swayze, Leah Thompson, Charlie Sheen, and Jennifer Grey. If you remember, this was the one about the Soviets landing on a high school football field and trying to invade an American town, and the teenagers rebelled, and you know, remember that big scene? Wolverines! That one, right here. This was the first ever movie to secure a PG-13 rating. And now, with the PG-13 rating, parents can have an understanding what they're about to let their kids go see, whether or not they want them to see it. I mean, I was a kid who grew up, I watched R-rated movies from the age of 5. You know, at the age of 5, I had seen National Lampoon's after the age of 5, I had already seen National Lampoon's Vacation. Or let me say, by the time I was 10, I had seen National Lampoon's Vacation, DC Cab, Purple Rain, Fright Night, Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, I saw all the movies, Revenge of the Nerds, and I saw all these movies that had the nudity and had the innuendos. Now, what my mother used to do was, if it wasn't shut off, if my mother allowed me to continuously watch it, she would either make me turn around until the scene was over, or she would do this, the hand over the eyes, until the scene was over. Of course, I would be like this. You know? But yeah. You see, PG-13, it was a compromise to make sure, you know, families could still go to see this movie if they want to. Just have the understanding that it's right there between PG and R. And by 1989, a new Indiana Jones movie came out, which is known as the best one throughout the whole series, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It secured a PG-13 rating. And today's standard, you know, and even Gremlins 2 secured that rating as well a year later. And the thing is, by today's standard nowadays, it seems like everything from my childhood is PG-13. So it goes to show me, I had a really good childhood. I really did. Can you believe that? This children's storybook has human sacrifice, child slavery, violence. I had the Last Crusade storybook as well, and they had Nazis in it. I mean, and you know what? Today's standard, if you grew up as a child in the 80s, I think we should all feel blessed. Because look at the way things, I mean, you can't even find hardly Dukes of Hazzard reruns on TV anymore because everybody is offended with the General Lee car having the rebel flag on the roof. This is what we've come to, and the Dukes of Hazzard was never a racist program. I mean, my mother was so against racism that she felt if anything was racist, I wasn't allowed to look at it. If you said a racist slur in front of her, she'd slap the taste right out of your mouth. Yeah, my mother hated the whole, and here's the thing, get this. My mother is a conservative Christian, and she's against racism. And they stereotype conservatives as being racist. Well, let's not get into the whole political thing. I'm just going ahead and stating a fact. See, the thing is, these movies today, I mean, let's think Jaws, the original Jaws from 1975, that was PG rated. Okay? That movie was made today, it'd be R. You know? I mean, almost every slasher movie that had come out in the last 40 plus years has secured R ratings. I mean, hell, some Friday the 13th movies came close to securing X ratings. And you would think, an X rating? That's what they do with porno movies. I don't know anymore, you know? But I had to go ahead and get out. Here, let me take the hair down again. I had to go ahead and make a new video. I've been wanting to do one for some time now. I've just been busy with a lot of things in life. But I'm going to start making more. And, I also want to tell you, I'm still working at the furniture warehouse. I'm going to be starting a second part-timer at a hotel on the weekends next week. I got to make the money. And by today's standard, because I have to make the money so I can buy more stuff to make the videos. Like more cool, buy some stuff for bad Oscarism, So, lots happening. So stick around. As I always like to say, if you're new to the channel, if you like the video, leave a thumbs up, comment in the box down below, and feel free to subscribe and tell your friends. Let's get this thing going. I mean, I haven't been stalling out on you or nothing. Like I said, I've been busy. Until then, this is your old pal, Russell J.S., wanting to wish you always. And you know what? I'm also going to be back on doing the weekly narc again, because I got a lot to talk about with narcissism and all that stuff. But I leave you always. I bid you adieu, bid you farewell with Godspeed. May the force be with you always.